Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Agustina Vergara Cid. She's an immigration law expert and a Young Voices contributor. Today, we're going to talk about her recent article that she wrote for The Hill. I just became an American. Don't close the door behind me. Augustina, welcome. Can you tell us what inspired you to write this piece?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Rohan. So, what inspired me to write this piece is, I recently became an American in the month of July. Finally obtained my citizenship after many, many years of an immigration journey. And what inspired me is, it was so special to me to be able to become an American and to go through that process. But it was really, really hard for me to immigrate to America legally. It's incredibly difficult for the vast majority of people to immigrate here legally, and for actually most of them is literally impossible because there are not enough legal avenues for people who want to come here and work, and build a life. So in the article, I tell a little bit of what it means to me to become an American and why I think that more people should be allowed the opportunity to immigrate legally here, like I had that opportunity.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your citizenship. And I actually wanted to follow up on that. You say that it was a very difficult process. Can you tell us more about it and how it changed your perspective, not just about immigration, but about life?
Yeah, so I'm gonna summarize it a lot because it's a really long story, and it's very convoluted because immigration law is incredibly difficult and convoluted, and the process is very, very long. But in a nutshell, I made it by a hair, as they say. Essentially, part of what inspired me to look into immigration and to focus on immigration policy and to advocate for a system that is more fair and more welcoming of peaceful people who want to work is that it was really taxing, really expensive, and really traumatic, honestly, for me to come here, to be able to be here. I came here on a student visa, and there were a number of things that happened in the middle while adjusting status, as they call it, to a different type of visa, like a work visa or permanent residency. There were many obstacles on my way. I don't want to get technical, but part of what happened, for instance, is there's this rule in immigration law where if you are adjusting status, like switching from one visa to another, you are not allowed to leave the country, for instance. You can leave, but then you can't come back and resume that process. It's like that process is deemed kind of like abandoned, right? And with how expensive, how time consuming, how almost impossible it is to fit into the very narrow categories that allow people to immigrate legally, it's really a really big decision if you want to leave. So what happened to me in that case, and when I was in that status, and what happens to millions of people in America, is that I couldn't leave, right? And then my father got very sick in my home country of Argentina. He got cancer, and he passed away with me not being able to go see him and say goodbye, right? So that's something that happens all the time, and that is such an unfair aspect of immigration law. And our whole system is really not. I call it sometimes like an anti-immigration system because it really makes it impossible for most people to immigrate, and for those who can fit into these very narrow avenues, it makes it so it constantly tries to push you out, and it makes it really, really hard for you to hang on and to really be able to finally obtain your legal status.
Well, you say that it's a very difficult journey and that you had to go through a lot of hardships, but then you wrote that don't close the door behind me. I just became an American. What do you mean by that?
So I think that much like any other injustice in this country, past and present and future, I think that our immigration system is a consequence of a betrayal of American values, right? So I love this country. I chose to be an American very consciously. It was a decision that I thought about, for a long time. But the truth is, I've always kind of like felt like I wanted to be an American. And then I studied the history of this country. I studied the the political philosophy of this country, and I admire it, and I wanted to be part of it. And I also realized, like I said, our immigration system is so unfair, so cruel, and so un-American that it's a rejection of these values. So uh, part of what I advocate for is, let's bring our immigration system closer, or let's align it to what the founding principles of this country are. And so that's why I'm still, like, even though I went through all that hardship, I'm still happy to be now on the other side, and to and to be here as an American, and better be able to help steer our country back to these important founding principles of freedom.
Do you think Americans would agree with that? In today's time and age and world, do you think that Americans actually support immigration?
Well, I think there's this issue of Americans. This is thing of, like, Americans is a land of immigrants, right? And to a large extent, that has been a myth since the 1920s, essentially, when the first very, very big, broad, draconian restriction to immigration became law. But the truth is, like, in my own experience and what I observe, is that even though Americans may vote for politicians like Donald Trump, who ran on a mass deportations agenda, I think that they turn against immigration when they get scared into thinking that these immigrants are irredeemably criminal, and they come here to harm us, and to destroy America. It's kind of like this collectivism, this tribalism, essentially, that politicians push, and that kind of like scare people, and they scapegoat immigrants. I think that, I mean, that happens, right? But also, when Americans meet an immigrant in person, and this has been my experience overwhelmingly over my almost a decade being here in America, is when Americans meet an individual immigrant, they are so welcoming, and they don't care about where you come from. Like, if you have an accent like I do, they don't care about anything. You come here to work, essentially, it's a question, and you're peaceful. Okay, welcome home. Yeah, join us. So I think there's this whole thing of, like, kind of like collectivism versus tribalism, and Americans remain, I think, welcoming of immigrants in the individual level. And there are some recent polls that have been asking people about their support of immigration, and apparently there's a Gallup one that puts immigration at the support for immigration at the highest it's ever been since they've been asking this question. I think that happens possibly because the mass deportations agenda and these draconian immigration enforcement that we're seeing in America is having the effect in Americans of really realizing, like, this wasn't about the criminals, and like, what? No, they are taking away my neighbors, the people that work for me, my coworkers, the people that I run into, in my neighborhood all the time. So I think that's why they're starting to realize that, immigration that's what it is. It's just people working, living, and building a life around you.
Right. Augustina, you briefly mentioned Donald Trump. Let me ask you about US President Donald Trump. He basically centered his re-election campaign on immigration policies, and he promised to carry out America's largest deportation of illegal migrants. I think he said he would deport over a million people, and thousands have already been deported. Given this, and given what's happening today, ICE raids, arrests, detentions, and deportations, how do you think life has changed for immigrants in the US?
I think part of what the Trump administration is doing is terrorizing immigrants, and it's not about the immigrant, the criminals, as they said, and it's not even about the illegal immigrants. The Trump administration is going after legal immigrants as well. It has ended the legal status for many people who were here
When you
legally, and
say, sorry, when you say legal immigrants to our international audience, can you tell who are these legal immigrants, and what could they possibly be doing in the US?
so legal immigrants is anyone who has followed a process mandated by law, or by some other regulation that allows them to be here with lawful status, meaning they enter the United States either being inspected, as in like they told someone, okay, I'm coming here, like here I am, so they didn't sneak in, and they obtained some sort of legal status. And legal status can range from anything from, being an asylum applicant, or being someone who already has asylum, or it could mean someone, who got a green card because they got married to an American, for instance, right? So all that whole range is, it's just, it means being legally in the United States is like the law or some other regulation allowed you followed a process that was laid out so you could be here legally.
So how has life changed for illegal immigrants? So I want to come back to that question. Do you
Yeah.
think they're living under more fear, and do you think they should they even have any hope with the current administration?
So yeah, immigrants, and I should say illegal immigrants. First of all, a lot of people refer to illegal immigrants to people that are actually legally here, like people on temporary protected status, or like I said, asylum applicants. But people who are truly here illegally, there's also people like that. But I think the vast majority of those people, yes, they might have crossed the border, which is technically a crime. It's true. It's a victimless crime, however, but it's true they broke the law, or they overstayed a visa, which is not a crime, but it's a civil violation. But the truth is that the vast majority of them are hardworking people who came here to build a life, and the only reason why they, broke the law to come here is because the law does not allow, uh, people who want to work in America, the vast majority of people who want to work in America, to immigrate here legally. And it's also, of course, a restriction on Americans, because Americans cannot hire whoever they want or associate with whoever they want, or otherwise, welcome into their homes whoever they want. And that's also a restriction on them. But yeah, things have changed a lot. Essentially, some ICE raids we've seen, footage that has, been reproduced around the world of ICE agents descending from military trucks in like wearing masks, and some of them wearing military uniforms, and essentially, hunting down people who look, so to speak, to them like illegal immigrants. So it's a reign of terror, honestly, and it's also a reign of terror for anyone who is short of, having citizenship in the United States, because you never know what they may, the reasons why they may try to detain you. You never know if your legal status could have somehow been revoked, and even we're seeing that U.S. citizens are being detained too, and they are being unlawfully detained, and they're held for days without access to counsel, without telling their families where they are, or without any sort of the constitutional rights that apply to them, which also, by the way, apply to immigrants, but especially to them because they're U.S. citizens. So it's a reign of terror, honestly, and I think that it's completely un-American.
Right. You say it's a reign of terror. Those are some very heavy words, but I have a question for you based on that. So you said you've been in the US for more than a decade. I was actually in the US from for about 5.5 years, and I was there on a student visa. And this was right about the time in 2016 when Donald Trump was getting reelected. Sorry, Donald Trump was getting elected for the first time.
Yeah.
You've been there for a lot longer than me, than I was. How different are the two terms? How was it like for people seeking legal status in the first term to now?
Yeah, so I'll correct. It's almost a decade I've been here in America, but yeah, it's different. I mean, on the first Trump during the first Trump administration, he also went after legal immigration, and that's when advocates came up with the term Trump's invisible wall, as they called it, because it's like all these, you know, uh, um, obstacles and regulations and you know policies that made it really really hard to immigrate to America legally. And of course he carried out deportations, but he didn't carry nearly, for instance, as many deportations as the Obama administration, for instance, right? So part of the difference is, at that point Trump ran on building a wall, so essentially keeping people out. Now he ran on mass deportations, which is very different from keeping people out. It's just getting people who are already here and kicking them out. That is a very, very big difference in between those two, policies. So right now he's focused on, extracting as many people as he can from American soil, and doing so in a way that is essentially by any means necessary. The law does not matter. Like, we just want them out. And the them is, yes, there's of course some criminals, which I agree should be kicked out. Violent criminals should not be here. They should be deported. But most of these people, as shown by ICE's own data and by independent people who are studying this issue, the vast majority of people are peaceful people, and many of them, it turns out, that had legal status, like people that were, in my opinion, completely illegally sent to be imprisoned in a third country, in El Salvador. Those people were, the vast majority of them were seeking asylum and actually had rights to be in the U.S. So I think it's very different. It's much worse now. It was bad then, but it's definitely worse now.
So, given the detentions, the arrests, and the deportations, what advice do you have for immigrants who are wanting to come to America today?
So I would say, from a practical perspective, get a lawyer. Seriously, I'm not even joking about that. Like, it used to be the case that sometimes you didn't need a lawyer for some applications for legal status here, depending on what they were for visas or green cards. That is no longer the case. You always need a lawyer, because I won't get into what has happened exactly, but you definitely need help to be able to, make sure that your application is absolutely perfect and pristine, because it can be rejected for basically any little tiny detail, essentially. But more broadly speaking, I would say to people who still want to come here, the reason people still want to come here is because America is, this beacon of freedom across the world. And I think even though we're going through these very, very dark times, it's not the first, dark period in American history that we've gone through. And I think that ultimately this will end. And that those values that we are here, like people are, colleagues of mine are, myself included, like, we're trying to defend, they will prevail, because the good will prevail, and there's people fighting for the rights of immigrants and Americans right now in this country. So I would say, it looks really dark right now, but it will get better, and this dark period will definitely end.
Thank you, Augustina, for your time and for your insights and for sharing about your journey. I'm sure it would have it you've painted you haven't painted the full picture, obviously, because you already said that it had a lot of hardships and you had to struggle a lot. But thank you for your time and thank you for talking about this. And to all our viewers who want to read Augustina's piece, it's linked in the description below. Thank you for joining. Thank you for giving your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.